and welcome back to My Big Fat Mess. I'm Anthony Ferraro, and today we're cooking lasagna. Let's have a look at our ingredients. Now, I use 3 beautiful meats. I've got pork, I have beef, and I have veal. This is the classic Italian combination. The bolognese sauce comes from the origins of Bologna, where it was made as a meat sauce, as a pick-me-up, but it's very rich, and everything comes in the sauce. The sauce is actually the shining star. You're getting different ketones from each meat. You know, you're getting that beautiful sweetness and that kind of silky texture that comes from the pork. The beef mince, it's nice and robust. As you start cooking that, it browns up really nicely, and you get that caramel, all those nice little crispy tones that come through. And then the veal is really earthy. We've got some garlics. Look, you can pop in as much garlic as you like, but definitely get some garlic in there. You know why? Because we like it. Some onions. Now, I've got 2 onions here. You could use just 1 big, decent sized brown onion, but considering the size, I would go with 2. They're amazing. 3 decent sized carrots. Look, between 3 and 4. You're going to need half a stick of celery. Because we're going to be making enough sauce to make a lasagna and freeze some for some bolognese, I'm going to be using the whole tin of the San Marzano tomatoes. Now, these are absolutely fantastic. They have the perfect blend of sweetness and acidity, and I highly recommend them. There's about 2.5 kilos worth here. The pasta is Latina. I couldn't get anything better, unfortunately, but you don't have to use Latina. If you can find some fresh laminated stuff, do it. I don't recommend using the dry stuff to make lasagna. I have done it a couple of times. Look, it does work. It just doesn't come out as nice. We're also going to be making a bechamel from scratch. So bechamel, really simple, you know. It's just a really flavorful type sauce. It just adds that little bit of oomph. A lot of people say bechamel is not Italian. Well, yes, it is. The origins of it, I believe, comes from France. But there is room in the Italian kitchen for bechamel, or as we call it, la bechamel. You know, a little bit of butter, a little bit of flour, milk, salt, pepper, and then my absolute favorite, and if you could smell this, nutmeg. So what we're going to start doing first is we're going to make the actual sauce. We're going to get the ragu going first. So I told you there was a trick, a secret little hack. We've got some cloves and some star anise. Now, a lot of people are going to say, that does not belong in lasagna. Well, it does. You know why I know? Because Signora Caterina from Bologna actually taught me this trick. And you don't need a lot. All I'm using is 2 cloves and 2 sprigs of the star anise. Once they're ground up, I'm going to use these as a slight seasoning agent for the meat while I'm browning it. As the meat is cooking, it's actually going to accentuate the flavors of the meat. Just a light sprinkling. This is not to overpower. Now, I don't like using a lot of oil when I'm browning my meat. I believe that fat has a place in the food. There's a reason for it. It helps lubricate, it helps seasoning, it helps with the flavor, it helps with moisture. Leave the fat in there. Don't add too much extra, and then start it browning nicely. So I'm going to start with the pork first. Bang! As soon as it hits, sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. That's what you want. So while the meat is browning, I do like to season just marginally. A little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, just a little bit of our magic mix. It's just to accentuate the flavor. So the pork is now done. Oh, just that smell is absolutely sensational. I'm going to deglaze this with a little bit of red wine. It just accentuates it. So I'll deglaze. All we're doing is we're taking off all of these little bits on the bottom, and we are dissolving them in, and that also helps make up the bulk of our sauce. It's absolutely beautiful. If you're not going to drink whatever you're putting in there, don't put it in your food. If it doesn't go in here, don't put it in there. Now that that's done, I add all that into there, and I now repeat the process another 2 times. Booyah! You know, there are always a few little remnants in there from the last lot that you've cooked, and you can just start to smell those spices coming through. Salt, pepper, seasoning, really, really important. Oh, mamma mia. Yeah, baby. Okay, my beef is done, and I'm going to repeat the process one more time. Okay, let's get a little bit more heat in there, deglaze, and then we go for the last time. All of that goes inside. And we go one last time. Let's get the ragu ready to go. Onions, cipolla. Ooh, cipolla. In terms of getting this done and cooked fast, grate all of your ingredients. So really simple. After you peel them and do your onions, on the, let's call it a mozzarella size. Grate everything on mozzarella size. Why? Because then everything is the same thickness, cooks at the same rate, and life goes on. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm gonna get the pan on now, just very gently, and we're gonna start the cooking process. We're gonna start them sweating out, just gently. Now here I don't mind putting in a little bit more. Way!
Booyah! Lasagna! Woo!
He likes it. It's very hard. You never know when the booby traps are coming. In the onion goes. And I'm going to turn the heat down. And I'm just going to gently sweat this. I don't want too much colour. I just want it to cook gently. And now the garlic. You know my trick with garlic. Give it a whack. So that goes in. All we're doing is getting a little bit of heat to it, softening it gently. It's on 6, so if you've got gas, that'd be something like a medium low. So what do we do now? We get our carrot in. Same size, mozzarella size. So I've got 3 big, decent sized carrots. Now, if you've noticed, I don't actually peel my carrots. They have been washed. I don't peel them for a reason. Again, the skins of the carrots give a bit of earthiness, a little bit of dimension, a different kind of tone and flavour that just opens up the dish really, really nicely. Every now and then give it a stir. So all that carrot's in, we've knocked out some of that heat, and as you can see, look at that, it's just sweating really nicely. Just want the nice tender bits. I mean, as you can see, it's beautiful and tender. I want to get rid of all that rough kind of stuff in there. I'll probably use 4 of these. So that is our 4 stalks. Grate them in. Just to be on the safe side, everything that's not inside the center bit, I'm actually going to take out. Why? Because it still has a couple of little strings in there. Just a cheeky little hack. All right, let's get all this inside now too. So now that that's in, what are we gonna do? Come on, you know the answer. We're gonna season for salt. So a lot of people will say, hey, whoa, you've put like 3 lots of salt in the meat. You know, you're putting a bit of salt in here. Aren't you putting a bit too much salt? Normally, yes, you're absolutely right. But you need to remember there's going to be 2.5 litres worth of sauce that goes in here, which needs to be seasoned. Plus, you've got your pasta sheets. They also will absorb some of the seasoning as well. And again, a little bit of cracked pepper. This is the stage where a lot of people would put some sort of stock in. Now you absolutely can. If you've got a beef stock, I would highly recommend it. If you want to put in some veggie stock or whatever, you can do that too. I don't particularly want to put in any type of stock. I want the flavours to naturally come from the food, so I'm just going to grab a glass of water. There it is, cold from the fridge, goes straight in. It's just there to help accentuate the cooking process. This is what is going to, once I do that, add a little bit more heat. So I'm up to an 8 now. So this is going to be like a medium-low type flame because we've got such a big, heavy pot. And I guess that's probably the trick to it. Find a nice, big, heavy pot. It's going to keep all of those flavours in there really well. Look at that. Like, it's absolutely sensational. So, some Marzano tomatoes, I absolutely love them. These are imported from Italy. You can find some that are locally grown here. I believe the last time I got some Australian stuff, it came from the King Valley. Look, use whatever you can. If you can't get your hands on some Marzano, just use whatever you can get your hands on. I do not like using passata for this. For the simple reason, passata is a very concentrated sauce. Passata will be very, very dry. Look at the natural color of that. You know, most of that water's gone, because now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add the San Marzano tomatoes. I'm gonna use the whole thing, all 2.5 kilos. Remember, I'm gonna make enough to make a lasagna and store some for later for a bolognese. Now let's get these in gently. Now be careful how you pop these in, because they do tend to spit and splatter. So now that they're in, I'm gonna give this a gentle stir. I'm going to increase the heat to 9. So now this is going to be medium high. And while that's happening, I'm going to gently use my little potato masher and just squash out all of these tomatoes getting the bulk of the juice out of them. Okay, I've squashed everything. Come and have a bit of a look. It's now starting to come to the boil. So I'm going to turn that down back to an 8 because I don't want it to be bubbling and going like crazy. But now that the heat is there and it's had a chance to dissolve any of the salt that's around, I just want to try it for salt. And I want to try it for balance to see if the acidity versus the sweetness is there and how do we fix that. I reckon it needs a little bit more salt. And something to counteract the sweetness. I'm going to add a bit of acidity. Cheeky little trick, a little bit of vinegar. So I've got a great apple cider vinegar. It's the one with the mother inside. It's got that residue, which is nice. For a pot of this size, I'm just going to use 2 little capfuls. 1 and 2. Okay, come on in. It's been cooking for 10 minutes. Have a bit of a look. It's not vigorously bubbling and boiling. It's just going really, really gently. And smells to die for. What do we do now? We're going to add in the meat, the carne. This is now when it becomes a ragu. So let's get all that in, just gently. And I don't know if you can see it, but look at all those extra juices and the vino and everything else that's going in there. To die for. Already that has changed completely in terms of smell. Wow! I'm going to drop the heat down to a 6. I'm going to cover it up and I'm going to let it cook gently for 1 hour. I'm just going to let it do its thing. And every 15 minutes, I'm just going to give it a gentle stir, just so the things on the bottom don't actually stick. That has been bubbling away, doing its thing really gently for the last hour. Look at how everything has just broken down. Look at the color. It's got that lovely orangey kind of twang to it. Now, you can see that there's not terribly too much oil. Everything's been absorbed in there beautifully. And look at the lovely ratio of meat to chunk to, I guess, moisture ratio. It's absolutely beautiful. So this is the perfect consistency, in my opinion, for lasagna. So I am going to cook this for another 10, 15 minutes, even 20 minutes. Just however long it takes for us to get the bechamel ready. All right. So I'm going to drop this down now because all I'm doing at this point here is gently evaporating off any excess moisture. So how do we start making bechamel? We start by making a blonde roux. What is a blonde roux, you ask? It's really simple. A roux is basically a thickening agent that as you cook it out, it's a flour and butter-based thickening agent that as it gets cooked with a liquid, starts to emulsify, and it basically creates what we call a warm emulsion sauce. Really simple. It's a blonde roux because we don't want to cook it out past a kind of a yellowy, golden brown kind of color. Because bechamel, we want it typically white. So to make the blonde roux, I'm going to use like 40, 50 grams of butter. And then you use roughly the same amount of flour, about 40, 50 grams. So I'm going to let that just gently melt. Okay, that's doing its thing. So now, and 2. Roughly equal parts. And you'll know if you're at roughly equal parts because it'll turn into like a shortbread type thing. There we go, that's our roux. And we're just gonna cook this probably for about 3 minutes. And you just cook it really gently because what you're doing is you are cooking the flour. And that's the whole thing. A lot of people don't cook their roux long enough and it's quite raw, and then it takes a long time for the bechamel or the emulsion to happen because it takes a while to cook out the flour. I might even add just a little bit more flour because I want it to be a little bit crumbly. There we go, much better. I'm happy with that. So now, about a litre and a half. This is 2 litres worth of milk, so about half. But first, just enough to take all the heat out. You saw that, it sizzled. This first bit now is what I do, and I get all of the roux dissolving. Salt, beautiful. Now you got to remember, that was 2 nice, healthy, generous pinches of salt. Why? Because I'm going to put about a litre and a half of milk in there. There is a fair bit of liquid to actually flavour. A little bit of cracked pepper. 1, 2, done. That's all it needs. Just a touch, for a little bit of bite. Now, you can start to see that it's thickening up. It's no longer milk consistency. Now is when I add the rest of the milk. So now that I'm getting a bit of warmth in there, I'm just going to start working into the corners. While we're doing that, let's check on the sauce. Beautiful. Beautiful. Smells to die for. When you're doing a bechamel, don't be in a rush to get the heat to it because it can burn, it can stick. Just nice and gentle. I'm on a 6 here. So probably like a medium-low flame. So come on and have a look. We're halfway basically on the bechamel. So it's been cooking for about 8 minutes. It's starting to thicken up now. This is how you know you've done a good job. When you lift it up, no lumps. So this is going to finish its cooking out now. I'm not going to cook it for another 8 minutes. I'm going to cook it for 6 because when I take it off for 2 minutes, it's going to sit. And while it sits, it still is cooking with residual heat and it's doing its thing. And it's just going to thicken up and be nice and beautiful and silky and smooth. All right, so I'm at the consistency that I'm happy with in terms of it being cooked. Now I'm just going to drop the temperature just a little bit. It's nutmeg time, baby. I would like to see that much nutmeg. Because I'm at the end stages of the cooking, I don't want to cook the crap out of it, and I want all the oils and I want all the beautiful freshness of that nutmeg that we've freshly ground in there to remain in there, which is why I don't like putting too much. And it's gorgeous! And look at that. It's got a really nice coating. No clumps, no mess, no fuss. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, 2 things. It needs a little bit of salt. And it needs a little bit more nutmeg. So silky, so smooth, no lumps, and yeah, bam. I'm really happy with that. Even though that seems a little bit liquidy, you got to remember that as this cools, this does thicken up. That's now off the heat. I'm going to move that aside. That's going to start cooling. My sauce is ready. Let's get our mise en place ready to start actually putting together the whole lasagna. But the first thing I'm going to do is turn my oven on. So I'm going to pop it on 200 and I'm going to go to fan forced oven. So what are you going to need? Pasta sheets ready to go. Now they're at room temperature so that they stay nice and flexible. They don't crack because they're too hard while you're trying to work them. I like peas in my lasagna. You don't need to put peas in it. I like it pretty simple. This is how I do it. You do it the way you like. But a little hack with the peas, these are still frozen. And I like putting them in frozen because if you cook them before they go in, they overcook and they go black. I like nice, vivid, rich, green, beautiful pea tasting like peas. Parmigiano Reggiano. Of course, you know, I love Parmigiano Reggiano. So this is about 200 grams. We're going to use about 70, 80, somewhere around there, which will grate and have that ready. Again, I'm not weighing it, I'm just going by eye. And I've got half a kilo of mozzarella. So this is like an Italian style mozzarella. You can find this at Coles, Woolies, Superbarn, anywhere you need it. I do prefer to use this one for lasagna, purely because it's not as processed, it's not as salty. You can see it's a lot whiter. I'll bring that in, look at that. Ooh, white, we like it. And it just smells really different and it's quite delicate. It's a bit softer, it's a bit more malleable. This is what we want. So, I mean, look at this. Look, when you tear it, you know, it's like real cheese. It's like cheese stringers. I know I shouldn't be saying that, but ultimately, the way that it's created and formed, look at that. It's beautiful. I will grate the Parmigiano. 70, 80 grams, somewhere around there. Next one, mozzarella, because mozzarella è bella. And I like to do the mozzarella on the mozzarella size. This is what I was telling you before. So I'm gonna go ahead and grate both of these because you will need the whole half a kilo. Depending on how cheesy you like it, you could go through and do 750. I've done it before. So we are going to start putting the lasagna together. Now, as you can see, pasta, it does become a bit brittle when it's fresh. So I always like to measure it out and see my pasta, how it fits inside. So a whole sheet like that fits really beautifully, but I still have a gap. So with my gap, I then like to kind of roughly figure out how that's gonna sit. And I do want it to overlap just a little bit because I want that pasta to kind of stick down. And then I will roughly get a knife and just cut it. All right, so now that we've roughly measured all that out, little hack. On the bottom, you need as much of the liquid as possible because the bottom generally tends to stick. Then, cheeky little hack. What am I gonna do? Come on, you know this. A little bit of water. This was boiled just a little while ago, so it's still warm and done. So now that we've got that, I'm gonna spread that in nicely. Now this will evaporate off. This is gonna start the cooking process for us brilliantly. Okay, so then the pasta goes inside and we try and get it in. Even if it rolls up the side a little bit, that's fine. Now we've got our piece that we cut before, which is going to overlap just gently. Look at that, perfect. First bit in, what do I do now? We just play the layering game. In goes the meat, then I'm gonna put a little bit of Parmigiano, just a little bit. Then I'm gonna put some peas, little bit of mozzarella, and then a little bit of bechamel. Now, as it cools, it starts to get clumpy, a little bit clumpy, but that's okay, because that will gently do its thing as we go inside. Layer it in. Yeah, I know, right? Wow. Now, with the bechamel, you can put as much or as little as you like. This is my little mate. My little mate just gently helps me get everything in and spread it nicely. I'm gonna put just a little bit more bechamel. That's it, and we repeat the process. So considering this is going to be the final layer, and now we're done, I don't like putting terribly too much sauce over the top, but I will spread this out nicely. I won't be putting any peas over the top of this layer here, but the first thing I will put on, I'm going to reverse it, is I'm going to put the bechamel first, and then I'm going to finish with the cheese. I always put the Parmigiano on first because, unlike mozzarella will go that beautiful brown and it'll kind of caramelize and have that nice color and that create that nice kind of crack, that crackling kind of type bubble on it. The Parmigiano doesn't do that. It generally tends to burn and it changes the color and it changes the sharpness of it. So I want that to be covered by the mozzarella. So I am now going to pop this in the oven. The oven's been preheating at 200 degrees. I'm going to drop that down now to 160, actually about 170. All I need now is for the pasta to cook, which won't take very long. It'll take about half an hour, 45 minutes in the oven. Keep watching it so the top doesn't burn. I don't generally like to cover the top of it because this has got quite a fair bit of moisture. I don't want it to be sloppy, so I need that moisture to evaporate. I need the oven to do its work. So I don't like covering it when I've got this much liquid in it. So we're going to pop this in the oven. We'll check it in on it at the 30-minute mark, and I'm pretty sure between 35 and 45 minutes we'll be ready to rest it. So I've let it go just a little bit more than 45 minutes. I've taken it to an hour only because look at it. How could I have removed it? Now, a cheeky little tip. This is a good one from my wife. When you are cooking a dish like this and you don't have it covered, it generally could tend to bubble over. So my wife said, why don't you put it on a tray so that way if it bubbles over, you are not ruining the oven and dropping it everywhere. Oh, look at that. So that was cooked for an hour with no top on at 170 degrees, and just look at that, beautiful. Bubbling all through the sides, lovely caramel over the top, nice color. We are going to let this sit for about 10 minutes. So that's 10 minutes and it's amazing. Everything is soaked in, it's beautiful. My favorite piece is the corner piece. In she goes and out she comes. Look at that, steaming, piping hot. Look at the ooze, absolutely gorgeous. How do you finish that off? Well, look, you can do it how you like it, but we've just quickly thrown together a cheeky little salad with some greens, and there we have it. Lasagna all'italiana, or in my case, alla calabrese. 3 layers of pasta. It's rich, it's creamy, it's beautiful, and it's just gooey, oozy yumminess. Enjoy. We're gonna eat now. You guys have a great day. I hope you enjoy making it as much as I did. I'm gonna enjoy eating it. Buon appetito.